Friends, fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, we are here and ready to get started with the presentation on how to craft a masterful keynote speech. Rich Hopkins has spent 24 years as a Toastmaster and over 20 years in front of audiences of really every size, sharing motivational stories, leading sales presentations, and coaching award-winning and audience-winning speakers. He teaches using his own experience as a father of 6, an elective amputee, and more than 30 years in sales and marketing. He knows what it takes to make a memorable speech. So please help me welcome our speaker today, Rich Hopkins.
This is not a keynote. Just want to make sure you realize that, because that's something that people don't always understand. People are calling just about anything they do that's longer than 15 minutes a keynote speech these days. And that's just not the case, but you just kind of have to live with it. This is a training. This is an educational session per se. So don't think it's keynote. It's not going to go like a keynote. This keynote creation training session is going to cover not a training keynote, not an entertainment only keynote, which you might give after everybody's eaten at 6 or 7 o'clock at night and they're all full of booze and they aren't really going to get anything out of what you have to say anyway. This is more a keynote that you would give to actually keynote a conference, a Toastmasters Leadership Institute, a Rotary District Conference, a major company's employee recognition event. This is the type of keynote speech that is a little bit more traditional, but using more modern techniques, because the keynotes of the 90s and the 80s, the Zig Ziglars, the Les Browns, you can't just go all fluff anymore. You have to be more than that if you want to get booked. I'm not going to talk so much about getting booked, but I do want to help you create a keynote speech that will help you get booked once people see what it is you have to offer. So with all those caveats out of the way, I hope you have an understanding of what you're going to get today, because you want to have the bones of your keynote speech really defined before you start writing the keynote speech. And when we get to the end of this, I'm going to give you an opportunity to sign up for my newsletter. And with that, you will get the keynote creation notes that this presentation is based off of. So you don't have to worry about taking notes if you don't want to. You can get these notes for free. They're in detail, and they're right in front of my face right now. So let's move on. No grammarian today, so I can say so all I want. Before you have your outline of a keynote, does anybody have any idea what the most important part of a keynote speech is? Just shout it out.
Inspiration.
Inspiration.
Idea.
Opening.
Idea.
Oh, message.
Message. I'm going to go with message. All those things that were stated were important, but it is message. What are you there to say?
Yep.
And if you don't have something to say, why are you giving a keynote? Before you write a speech, you have to know why you're writing the speech. What is your message? But then you have to think, okay, well, how important is my message? How impactful is my message? You just want to give a message on never giving up? Okay, well, why should we never give up? See, a message isn't really about telling us what we should do. It's about solving a problem we have. Your audience has a problem, and you're there to solve that problem. Most audiences all have the same problems. It's just a matter of to what degree they have that problem and how that problem applies to their life. You can have a perseverance problem whether you are a plumber or an IT person or a parent. Now, how you apply that perseverance problem when you're giving a keynote is going to be different depending on the group you're in front of. The solutions are probably going to be very similar, but how you talk about the solutions, again, will change based on the audience. But do you want to just pick a message because you like the message? Or do you want to pick a message because it's important in your own life? I'm going to say it's because it's important in your own life. Because if you're just up there giving a book report, I read about this once and I know it's important, so I want to make sure you know it's important too. There's not a lot of oomph in that message. You want to have something that you can actually draw from your own life experience to prove. You want to give them a solution that you have used in your own life. When I talk about winning anyway, which is all about not letting the world define who you are, what a victory is, what a failure is, but instead choosing your own victories, setting your own goals, looking at your life the way you want to look at it. I can go back and look at various points in my life when other people have tried to define who I was, whether it was when I was a kid and my disability made me walk around everywhere funny, causing people to make fun of me, people telling me what I could and could not do, whether it was getting to the world championship a couple of times and not winning, actually having it show up in a documentary of me not winning, and people perhaps not believing in me or telling me, hey, you can get there, but you can't win. You're a failure. Well, guess what? I can win anyway. But of course, the biggest messages that I have are usually around my leg and when I let go of my lower left leg, because losing the lower left leg was better than keeping it, because it was keeping me back. It was holding me back. Sometimes you have to let go of something to get something greater, which is an ultimate win anyway moment. And if I've been too vague, well, let's just say that I upgraded my lower left leg and now have a super deluxe robot lower left leg. So that's how I use my own story briefly in my keynote. Obviously, I can take those stories and other stories I have from my life and from other people's lives and take my keynote up to 45 minutes, even up to an hour and a half. When I coach speakers, I have them write a 45-minute speech so they can get it down to 30 minutes or 25 for some groups and bring it all the way up to an hour or more. But 45 is a nice middle ground time. So what is the problem you're solving? And every one of you is going to have a different problem based on your life. It might feel like it's the same problem as somebody else, but the way you've experienced the problem is different. And you say, oh, these speakers, they all talk about the same thing. Yeah, they do, but they all speak anyway because they tackle the topic differently. They tackle it from their own perspective, from their own experiences. That is why you can have a keynote that is going to be on perseverance just like somebody else's, but it will be completely different because it's going to be mostly based on you. All right, let me get into some nuts and bolts here. Hopefully, I've kind of made myself clear as to what the most important thing is, the message and the problem. So once you know the problem, you want to start thinking about how you're going to solve that problem. What is the process that you use to solve that problem? Is it a 1, 2, 3? Is it one process that you might have 3 different ways of illustrating? Are you just talking about living more healthy and it's all about diet? Well, maybe you have 3 different ways you're going to talk to them about diet. Or you're going to talk to them about diet and exercise and mental health. So those are 3 different points in a keynote, all about living a better life, a more healthy life. So it doesn't necessarily have to be as diverse as the latter, because you can take one item, one solution, and find a lot of different ways to apply it. Lots of different case studies, maybe something you did, maybe something one of your friends did, maybe something somebody famous, well, as long as it's not Lincoln or Kennedy or Steve Jobs or whatever. Try to find somebody a little bit more remote that people won't go, oh, again. That's why I mostly use personal stories in my speeches, because people don't know my kids. People don't know my friends, although after they hear me talk, they usually know them pretty well. So come up with that process, because that is one of the key differences between a keynote now and a keynote, frankly, pre-9/11. Those of us that were around in 9/11, which is probably most of us on this call, we know that before that moment, we had a lot of fluff keynotes. And then suddenly the keynote industry tanked for a while. Events stopped happening, and it became harder and harder to get booked, because people wanted to know if they were bringing in a speaker, they were actually going to get some return on investment. So all the meeting planners basically changed their mindset and said, okay, I'll hire you if you can tell me what our return on investment is. What is your solution? What is going to happen to us when we hear your speech? What are we going to get to go do? How are we going to improve? Now, the good news is you still don't have to give a speech that is entirely informational or training to be a keynote speech or to get hired. You just have to be able to tell them somewhat of what you're going to train them on in a keynote fashion, that you are going to have some action items. And then you can go back to the entire storytelling route, because the meeting planner hires you and they're happy because you've given them some takeaways that you're going to have. But it's the audience that is going to love you for not giving them a training. It's going to be the people who are paying you above the meeting planner, who are going to see their audience happy, giving you a standing ovation, giving you great reviews afterwards because you didn't go the route of a training, that is going to make you worth it and recommended to the next level. So it's you got to kind of be sneaky. You got to give the meeting planner what they want, but once you get there, you got to give the audience what they want if you want to get what you want, which is booked again in front of more audiences in the future. All right, a little inside information on that one. So you've got your process, which is basically going to be your solution in storytelling form. And there are a lot of other sessions that have gone over how to tell stories. Tell a story, make a point, or make a point, tell a story. Story should anchor your point in it, so that I'm not sitting here trying to remember bullet points. I am remembering your story, and by remembering your story, I understand the lesson that's there. All right. From beginning to end on a keynote, if you want to take notes, this is right now the place to do it. You open your keynote with a hook story. Your hook story should have something to do with your overall message. If you're talking about perseverance, you take the first couple minutes, tell me a very quick story about how you persevered when you were 5 years old and why it's funny. Because if you don't make me laugh in the first couple minutes, I may be playing Candy Crush before I get to your third, fourth, fifth minute. You make me laugh in the first couple minutes and you've connected with me. I now trust you. I now like you. I know that I can listen to the rest of it. Make sure that hook story has something to do with the rest. It can't be just some lame joke from the internet. Can't just be some meme that has nothing to do with what you're talking about. It's got to be something that relates to your message. After that, you want to talk about the pain. Yeah, pain. I told you about the problem. Well, the only reason something's a problem is because it creates pain, right? Because it creates pain. So what is their pain? If it's perseverance you're talking about, their pain is that they're not getting very far in life. They're not accomplishing what they want to accomplish. They feel like they give up too easy. They're going to lose their job. They're going to lose their family. They're not going to stick to a diet. Depends on your audience. What is the pain that not having perseverance is creating for your audience, if that's your message? So you want to get in and describe that pain. Let them know what their pain is. Don't tell them you have that pain. Tell them what their pain is. And don't use terms of we feel this way. Say you feel this way. Because when you say we, I can deselect myself in the audience. When you say you, it's you, one-on-one, that you're talking to. And they have to work a lot harder to deselect themselves from your message. Don't be too accusatory. Don't say, you are all fat. That may not be good. You might say, you are having an issue, or you wouldn't even be here, with your health. And it's stopping you from doing this, and this. After you have brought their pain out in them, then you can talk about yourself a little bit, because you want to have the empathy piece. You've got hook, pain, and now empathy. I understand. I've got trouble too. I can't stay on a diet. Last night I was watching a movie and I had Twizzlers and Ben and Jerry's. I have tried and tried and tried. Talk about how you have been in their position, or are in their position, or are battling at the same time there in the same ways. Because if they think that you are just the guy who climbed Mount Everest, they know they're never going to do that. And you mean nothing to them except possibly a little bit of entertainment. Because you're not going to inspire them to go do anything unless they realize you have been in their shoes and they can be in your shoes. Even if they probably don't want to cut off the bottom half of their leg. But, they usually go beyond that. So you understand them. Once you've connected with them in terms of that empathy, this is where you come across with your promise. I understand your pain. After the speech, this is how you're going to feel. You're going to feel ready to take this on again. You're going to have the tools you need to take this on again. You are going to end up, after 12 months, having this, and this in your life. It's promise. That is your promise. If they do and what you tell them to do in this speech, if they follow the examples you express in this speech. Because if you don't give them some hope, if you don't promise them an outcome, why, again, would they keep listening to you? To tell them what they're going to get. After that promise, that's where you go in with your process. Your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points, 7 points if you got a full hour. But, keep it simple. Sometimes even an hour, 3 to 5 points is more than enough. Sometimes 3 points is enough, depending on how you tell them. You can have a couple of stories for each point. Don't overload your audience. If you try to say too much, a lot can be forgotten, a lot can be dropped out. But you want to give them good examples. When I talk about winning anyway, I talk about my best friend who grew up wanting to be a film director and ended up only becoming a film editor. And how the world, of course, looks at people who had a goal and didn't reach it as losers. And so they would look at him as a loser, even though he is, if you look on Google, the highest grossing film editor of all time based on the movies he's worked on, because he happens to be the head film editor for Marvel movies. all the Avengers movies, all the Captain America movies, the last Spider-Man movie. He's the most successful film editor in the business. But by the world standards, he's a loser. But he's a great example of winning anyway. And I talk about my daughter and how she has learned to live anyway after a lot of medical issues that I won't go into here because I'm not going to go into a major emotional situation on this particular call, but basically she's had to face every day and try to figure out how to live anyway. And then I talk about my leg. And my leg is my Speak Anyway story. It's the ultimate story. It can be your conclusion. It can be your ultimate part of your process. You tend to want to wait to tell your full story until you've had other stories prove your promise so that it doesn't become all about you climbing Mount Everest. You've shown them it works for other people. Now they want to hear how it worked for you. Then you have the time to go into a sub-close, wrap up all your points again, reaffirm what you've said, go into a close, perhaps with another smaller story. And there's more, but I don't have time for more. But, you know, after the close, you really just want to get applause, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the chat the link to sign up for the newsletter so you can get all the notes. You get contact information for me. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm happy to do a free consult with anybody who wants to write a keynote. You can see if we're a good match coaching-wise. And I can always recommend you to other people. I know lots of people who coach people for keynotes. Not everybody's right for everybody. But a keynote is not as hard as people think it is once you have a structure down. And even if you're doing a keynote that's more training, more of an education session, you can use this format as a template to make sure. Because even in a training session, you want to identify their problems. You want to connect with them. You want to empathize with them. You want them to like you. So make sure these items are there. Vicki, you're going to make me shut up. I know it.
Thank you so much, Rich. I have to make you shush up because I know some of these folks, they don't have to leave right away because there's not an additional session. They may want to stay and ask you a few questions, but mostly we want to say thank you so much for this great formula. Please help me thank Rich. He's done a great job of giving us the information, the basic structure. I'm sure some people will be in contact with you. I just need to let the participants know that they want to return to the main session in order to participate in the closing and